Hello, everyone. Today is December 8th, 2022, and this is the Cluster API Provider Azure Office Hours. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't been to this meeting before, you can get edit access to this agenda document by joining the SIG Cluster Lifecycle mailing list. And we do this every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. So let's get started. If you haven't already, please add your name to the attendee list. And if you have any agenda topics, you can add them in the doc under open discussion. So we always take a minute at the beginning of each call to give a chance for anyone who is new or who hasn't been to a meeting in a while to say hi and introduce themselves. So I do see a few new names. If anyone here wants to say hello, this is your time. I will mute and let you introduce yourself if you'd like. All right. Not seeing any hands or anyone unmuted, so I keep going. Let's see. All right, we will do the milestone review at the end. For now, we'll jump into the agenda. So first item I added, but I think, I don't know, Jack, if you want to go over it, but basically we said we would talk about this yesterday.
Yeah, we can do this together. Your audio is a little bit in and out, Cecile.
Sorry about that.
I
will try my best to speak loudly.
Okay, cool. So this is something that I observed actually a couple months ago. That the PR has been open for a while. So thanks for anyone paying attention and for folks like Cecile reviewing it, for hanging in there for week after week. The short story is that I made an observation that there are no webhook enforcement rules for updating the control plane endpoint for Azure Managed Cluster. I think this is actually Azure Managed Control Plane. And I did a little research and concluded that from an AKS perspective, there is no, the control plane endpoint, which is essentially the URL to the API server, to the control plane, that will never change on a cluster. That's an integral property. So if you have a cluster and you want a new API server endpoint for whatever reason, then you have to create a new cluster. I couldn't find that it stated contractually that AKS would never change that, but it seems pretty definitive that that would be very, very disruptive. So I just thought it might be a good idea to reflect that API reality in CAPZ so that CAPZ can ensure that no other actors ever accidentally or malevolently try to change this value. So that's the backstory of the intent. The challenge is that this is a sort of a funky configuration vector because it's not user configurable, but it is the way that we allow the AKS API to configure it. So what happens is when you create a cluster, assuming a successful terminal response, so like an exit 0 from the AKS API, part of the response data is the API server URL. It's the endpoint to connect to the control plane. And how we do that in CAPZ is we wait for that successful response, and then we interrogate that response data, we pull out that URL, and then we, in the controller itself, we update this value control plane endpoint.host and control plane endpoint.port. Cecile, has anything that I've said been incorrect or incomplete so far?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. So the challenge is that that background automated process goes through the webhook plumbing. And so we aren't actually able to, at least I'm not aware of a way that we are able to fulfill the two requirements. Users may not update this vector, but the AKS API may. We don't have an architectural way to do that. Is that correct, Cecile?
Well, so I guess that was my question when I was reviewing this. Is like, is there a way we could be clever with this and not let it be updated by the user, when the cluster hasn't been reconciled yet. So I guess one of my questions was, is it possible for a user to want to set this before creating the cluster ever?
No.
Okay. So in that case, I think the main difference between what we're doing here and what we're already doing for the self-managed Azure cluster is that for the Azure cluster, it is already immutable in the webhook, so we are enforcing that, but the controller will never try to set it if it's already set. So that's the big difference, because here what we're doing is essentially disallowing updates in the webhook, but then not having our controller follow that rule, which means our controller could itself run into a webhook error.
Which part are we not doing the same? Because I feel like the if not equal to empty string does what you just described.
So
in go ahead.
I don't know if I can do this on the fly, but let me try to show what I mean. So in Azure cluster controller here, we're doing this like we're only setting it if it's equal to empty string, right? For host and ports or 0 for ports. So essentially we're never setting it in the controller unless it was unset. But for managed cluster, well, there's two parts. There's managed control plane and managed cluster. And managed cluster just reconciles whatever managed control plane has, but for managed control plane, and I don't know if I can find this very easily, but I think it was in the, it was a bit different in the managed cluster itself. Sorry, this is very into the weeds for everyone who hasn't been following that PR. Yeah, so here for managed clusters, what we do is we like create or update the resource, and then on every reconcile we will set the endpoint. And so that function basically just sets that value, and I can show you, and it sets it no matter what, even if it's not empty. So that's the big difference.
I see. That I think would be a positive change. So I can incorporate that into my PR. So that I think maybe that was implemented with the expectation that AKS may change this at any time, right. Or maybe it was set that way as a kind of, instead of using a webhook to prevent the user from messing this up, this was a way of overriding a user update.
Exactly. So in one way of doing is we always overwrite the user, so we just ignore whatever they say and just always make sure it's correct, which is one way of doing it. I guess the downside of that is if a user does set it, they won't know that it was ignored. It will just silently be ignored. The other way of doing it is like actively prevent the user from setting something, which means that they will run into a webhook error if they do. But the slight issue with that is like if they do set it before we get a chance to set it, then we can't overwrite them anymore. So they end up with a broken configuration.
Right. I think that that's okay because they shouldn't be setting it. There's no way for us to disambiguate between a user setting this value in the cluster template at cluster creation time from that background controller update operation.
Well, so that was the thing that I was trying to get to, like maybe we could do that, but I don't know. So one idea that I had off the top of my head, and I think we should probably time box this just quickly, is what we're doing in the managed cluster controller here is we're setting the status to ready and then true, and then after that we're setting the control plane endpoints. So one thing we could do is basically say like if the status is not, or if it's not ready yet, then you can't set this. Like let the webhook reject every request to set this value unless ready is true. That would be one way. I don't know how
I see
that would be though.
That would be I think that would be an improvement. So basically we add a create webhook for this endpoint, which says if ready is not equal to true, then throw a webhook error.
Yeah.
And then this flow will always fulfill those webhook requirements because it's literally serially setting that property to true before it's setting the control plane endpoint value. I think that paired with that create webhook that we just described, paired with updating the update in that other controller flow to only set the value if it's an empty string. I think that's an improvement from the current model.
Okay, yeah, I think they're just the current thing we're doing is kind of in between where we're like disaligning it, but not pushing the user to a successful place. So it's a bit dangerous, I think, but I think that would get us to right to a better place.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, this has been helpful for me. Thanks everybody else for your patience. Thank you, Cecile.
Yeah, no worries. Does anyone have any questions or sorry, this was very, very specific, but happy to help explain it if people are confused or if there are any suggestions for how to do this better.
Especially if someone's like, I depend on changing the control plane endpoint every week, which would be extremely surprising, but I'd love to know about that.
Yeah. Also, if people are curious, the link to the PR is in the doc, so go check it out. All right.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I just had a quick question. So, so with this, like setting the endpoint each time, would that replace the validation in the webhook, or would that be like on top of what Jack already has in the PR? Because it seems like the self-managed cluster doesn't have that same type of validation in the webhook.
It does actually. So
it does. Okay.
Also does have the immutable validation in the webhook. So it would be on top of what Jack already has, I think. Right, Jack?
I actually am unfamiliar with what self-managed cluster does. Willie, are you asking, does the self-managed cluster flow do the same thing where if ready is only set the control plane endpoint from cube ADM in this point perspective, only do that if ready is equal to true or something equivalent? Is that what you're asking, Willie?
Not exactly. I was just wondering if like you were trying to, we had to add like the endpoint, the setting of the endpoint on top of what you already have, or like replace it completely. So it turns out it's just adding on top of the webhook validation. So that makes sense.
Cool. I don't fully understand the context, but it sounds like, go ahead.
I'm sorry, here's that same immutable validation in the webhook for the self-managed clusters. That's already in there. Does that answer your question, Billy?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Anything else on that topic? All right. If not, Jack, you have the next one. Go for it.
Okay, cool. So this will hopefully be quick. Can you kindly click on that first link? So this is, I'm just going to provide a brief update on all the managed Kubernetes goings on. So we, 11 or 12 of us met on Wednesday before the Cluster API office hours and had an introductory discussion around managed Kubernetes in CAPI. I thought it was really, I'm very hopeful about the prospects of this. Seems like a lot of folks are engaged. It's going to be a long effort to make any change, but I wanted to link to this PR so that folks on this call who are interested in keeping up to date with that week by week have access to the documentation of where we're meeting, and this eventually this will get merged, I think, and then it'll be a more durable statement of all this info. But for now, the PR suffices. The Zoom links, it's the CAPI Zoom link, and we have an agreed upon time on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific US time. So that's just a PSA. And then the next link on the agenda doc points to the graduation doc, which has been updated in the last week since last week's office hours. So folks, please take a look at this. This is getting nearer, I think, to merging. There's more concrete detail in the doc in terms of status. So this, I think, I will advocate that this land in CAPC, and then, you know, whenever there's a status update on any of the the prerequisite items there, I'll push a quick PR update so this becomes a kind of authoritative state of the world. There's also going to be some project boards that we're building, so those will be referenced from here as well. But the really the short story is that we want end-to-end tests, and we want documentation, and then we have a final outstanding confirmation. So that's, I think I'll lean on Matt a little bit, and we'll work within the CAPI community to clarify the machine pool prerequisite. Seems to me from our community's perspective, we want to graduate with machine pool being experimental. So I just want to clarify that with CAPI to make sure that's not controversial. Any questions on any of this? So if you're running managed Kubernetes, if you're running CAPZ with managed Kubernetes AKS in production, all of the discoverability and investigation we've done over the last several months suggests pretty confidently that you can continue running those and building platforms. We'll be graduating this without any breaking API changes.
Thanks, Jack. Anyone have any questions? Not seeing any raised hands. All right, if you're interested in managed clusters, please take a look at the proposal. And okay, before we move on to this next topic, which is probably going to be also pretty lengthy, does anyone have any other topics, any questions, comments, feedback, anything in general that they wanted to bring up? All right. All right. So I guess Jack, others, I don't know who put this down, but we wanted to talk about, we're seeing some failures in the end-to-end test. What's going on?
So I put that down. I actually, for the, I don't know, let's say for the engagement of the audience, maybe we do the milestone review now, because that's a little bit more inclusive of folks in the room. And then we can do this at the end as a kind of breakout. And if folks want to dive into the weeds, that's great. But if folks also want to drop off, that's also great.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Any objections, or is that good with everyone else? All right, seeing some thumbs up. Great. All right, let's look at the milestone. So today is December 7th, which means we're officially halfway through the milestone, and a month from our timed release in the beginning of the new year. So let's see. I think I'll just go over what's in here, check if there's anything that needs to be updated or kicked out of the milestone, and then in the meantime, if you see anything that you're working on that's not in here that should be in here, please comment on that issue, or if we can include it in there. All right, so first one is EMSS Flex. Matt, do you have any updates on that one, or are we still on track?
I think we're still on track. I'm catching up with your comments and investigating something that looked like a flake, but it's happened 3 times now, so maybe there's something there. Yeah, but we're good.
Okay, cool. All right, next one is the proposal, sorry, for workload identity integration. I don't think Ashutosh was able to make it, but last time I checked, the proposal was getting very close. He was addressing the last few comments. If you haven't reviewed this yet and you have an interest, please review. I think we're on track to merge the proposal by the end of the milestone. I don't think we'll be on track for implementation for that release, though. Any questions so far? Please feel free to raise hand or whatever, or just shout if you have a question. I'm trying to keep participants.
I think he did say that he actually opened up a PR for the implementation work in process as well, but
okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Cool. Let's see. We had this one, I think, assigned to you, Jack, about the conformance test shows green even if it has failed tests.
Yep, I haven't heard back from the submitter. Would you, can I ask you to just do a quick follow-up, and maybe if we don't hear back next week, we'll bump it to the next milestone.
Sure. Yeah, we can look at that later. I think we did see it ourselves though, right? So I don't know if we necessarily need to hear back from the submitter. Since it was an issue from April, it's unlikely that they're still active.
I see. I'm not sure that I did see that, so maybe I just don't quite understand what the issue is.
Okay, I'll follow up with you after offline. I think we were looking at one together, and that's what led us to look at this issue again. But let's see if we can make sense out of it. Cool. Okay, full support for AKS cluster autoscaler. Mike is not here. Does anyone else want to speak to the? Oh, John.
Yeah, I did take a look through that PR. I think it's pretty close. There is at least one bug in there, but I don't think that will threaten the milestone at all.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, next one is the Windows cluster with cloud provider external does not work. So, Jack, I know that
Yep.
we're not. Go ahead. You're not.
Yeah, there's a corresponding PR for that, and I haven't looked into the test failures to discover if they're part of the Flake saga or if there's something broken with that template. So I expect this is important enough that we'll prioritize this for landing in the next few weeks. We can just.
Sounds good. I think related to that, I was also going to start looking at adding a template for entry cloud providers explicitly, so that we can then start migrating our tests to all use out of tree, so that we're testing out of tree by default. But yeah. Cool. Any other questions so far or comments? All right. Next one is the network interfaces configurable. I see, Dane, you were in here somewhere. Is there anything you want to say about that one?
I'm sorry, did you ask me?
Yes, sorry. I'm just looking at this PR, the network interfaces configurable PR. Do you think we're still good for including it in the release in 1.7?
I believe so. Yeah, we should be fine. I've been busy with other things the last couple of days, so apologies I haven't been able to respond, but I am hopeful that within the next day or two I should be able to.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I think it's getting really close. Great, thank you. Next one, I don't know anyone who is following that PR or working on that PR in here. I know Willie had reviewed. I added some comments. I think they answered the comments, and I owe them another. So I think that one is also close. Just waiting for more review.
Yeah, I saw that they replied to your comments, and I'll follow up, or I'll take another pass over the PR too.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I have to review that as well.
All right, great. Cool. All right. Respect externally managed annotation for unmanaged machine pools. I don't know if Michael is in here or Jack, if you want to talk about that one.
Yeah, I don't know if I've looked at it recently enough to speak to that. Maybe this will tell the story. So yeah, I think I feel like this would be great to land, but I haven't done anything. So
okay,
we'll circle back next week, and if no progress has been made by anyone, maybe we can kick it to the next milestone.
cool. I think we did merge copy 1.3, which I believe has the new annotation included, right? Is that correct?
That's right. There should be a follow-up. I need to file an issue because we've got a sort of interim solution in place already for the autoscaler stuff. So
Okay. So we can probably just update that PR as well to use that annotation directly.
I agree.
All right, cool. Thanks. Dependabot. Anyone know about that one?
I'm not sure if they got back to those questions.
Yeah, I think we're waiting to hear from the author on that one. Let me try to Mhm. Right. Yeah, it'd be great to see that one land, and I think we can always just merge the first iteration of it and then improve with those comments. Not, yeah. All right, let's go. Next one is mine. That one is waiting for review. So just this one's ready. Next one is the resource ID card for Azure Cluster Identity. I believe that's also under review, really.
Yeah, it was approved, but Nawaz left a few new comments that I need to address. Should be done pretty quick though.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so Jack, I think that's the PR we already talked about for testing external copywriter with Windows, correct?
Yeah.
Skip over that one. Nawaz, log managed cluster spec changes. Is that one ready for review?
Yeah, that is ready for review.
Okay, so I will leave that in there, and that's good for the milestone. Is Jonathan here? No. Does anyone know about this one, Jonathan? You've been following what's going on.
I have been looking at that. I haven't looked at it for a couple days, but I'm guessing that's pretty close. So I think that's good to keep in the milestone.
Okay, thank you. All right, managed Kubernetes evolution proposal. I think that's the graduation one, Jack, right? That we just looked at.
It's a slightly different one that I think I'm going to close. It was mainly a sort of, I don't know, a statement of I was trying to use it to advocate with the CAPI community that we don't have to change our API to the option 3 thing, and I think that that advocacy has been successful. So I'll go ahead and close that PR.
Okay, good. I just removed it from the mouse.
Great.
This one is the graduation vote. Yes. Okay, so that one.
That's exactly right, and I think I would love to see that merged this week actually, and then turn into a living document.
Okay. Race detector for unit test. Matt,
It's ready
that
for review.
ready for okay, good.
It has been for a while, but we weren't sure that the race detector was actually on, so I put some temp commits on it yesterday to prove that it was working. I think it's good to go.
Okay, sounds good. All right, and then I'm guessing this one is approved in LGTM, so it just needs it needs a rebase. Okay, so that one should be good to go. Jack, when you have a chance to rebase. And then this one is also, I think, pretty straightforward, so I don't think I need to. So that one should be good.
I think that one's ready actually. We had a discussion about where we're going to host those files, but if we have a consensus-ish, then I think we can merge it.
Okay, sounds good. And then I'm just confused because I thought this was the PR I was looking at earlier. Now I realized there are 2. So I don't know what the other one was.
That looked good to me. It was just failing tests. Yeah, it's one of those end-to-end test flake things from yesterday.
Yeah, this is just the PR for that issue, basically. Both the issue and the PR are in the milestone somehow. Okay, so yeah, that one's good to go. It's ready for review. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Do we think there's too much in here? Not enough? How are we feeling about the release? Jack.
I think there's too much, but we've got another week, and next week I think we'll be kicking a lot of things off of this list, just in anticipation of the holidays.
Yep.
We've got 4 weeks left, but really we've got like probably 1 or 2 weeks left. So
yeah, a lot of the maintainers are US based and are probably going to be away for end of December. So just FYI, if you're trying to get something reviewed and merged, probably want to get that in there for the in the next week or 2, if possible. Cool. Anything anyone wants to add or anything that should be in here that's not in here? Okay. And we already have a lot of stuff that's closed in this milestone. So that's really good to see. So yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take a pause and ask again if anyone has any questions for the project, for the maintainers, any comments and feedback. And if not, we're going to jump into end-to-end test debugging. So feel free to drop off if you're not interested. This is probably going to get pretty technical. So if you want to get that time back, feel free to drop off, and we'll see you next time. For anyone who does want to stay and is interested in looking at some test flakes, please hang on. All right, Jack, would you like to drive this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Do you want me to share my screen and take over, or do you want to
Yeah, I can do
go
it.
to test grid?
Do you want me to stop the recording or should we record this?
We can record this, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, let me participants, claim host.
Yeah, you're co-host now. Go.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you so much. All right, so let me see. I'll open up a new browser window. Let's see. Okay, can folks see the
Yes.
test grid interface? Okay, great. So I propose that we scope this to the end-to-end job. That's where I saw most of the flakes. It's possible there are flakes in other jobs. There's an optional job, which runs a few cluster scenarios that we don't run with every PR. And then there's a EXP job, which we run for AKS. But I was observing this in, actually the easiest thing is probably, let me go to a PR and just, I'm going to go to test grid via one of these guys. If I click on this and then do job history. So first off, before we go down the rabbit hole, did other folks observe this in the last 1 to 3 days? Basically this week. Getting one thumbs up.
Are we talking about PRs specifically?
Yeah, I've just noticed, I mean, this is a somewhat like anecdotal thing, but I've noticed this week it's been hard to review PRs, and it's been so hard where I've started questioning my review capabilities because tests keep failing, and I'm like, what did I miss in this? And then I look into it and it's totally unrelated. Okay, so go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I've been seeing it too. There are some timeouts, resources doesn't spinning up.
All right, cool. So there's just from the, if we just take the data of the PR submitter here, there's a nice cross section. Basically everyone that's experienced this in the last 24 hours. Matt, you experienced it, I experienced it, John experienced it, Willie experienced it, Alberto experienced, I think that's Alberto, and Cecile experienced it. So maybe let's go from oldest to newest, and I think this is the link I want. And let's see if we can find any patterns. Okay, so this one rings a bell for me just in terms of the job failure. So what happened here? What happened here is we got an error yet. We are
At 2 out of 3.
Yeah, that one definitely rings a bell for me as well.
okay. You saw a similar, well, let's see if we can prove that, Cecile. Do you think it was as recent as yesterday evening?
Probably
Let's
not.
see.
No, that one.
Oh, we
Which-
did get one here. Oh,
Oh yeah, no.
it is the same thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for your high functioning working memory. All right. So what is happening here? Let's see if we can do some correlation. So this looks to be a lot of unnecessary information, but we've got 117. So this is the same symptom. So let's see what we can find from this. I'm going to go back and look at artifacts. We've got 2 out of 3 control plane nodes online. Should we look at the cluster API or the CapZ controller manager logs? CapZ probably.
Probably cups, yeah.
Okay, no, that's not what I want. So 1QN. Okay, we've got 2 megs, 3 megs of data. That's good. I'm gonna go down here to the bottom and see if there's anything interesting here. Okay, here's an error. This looks to be like a boilerplate error, just waiting for a machine. So this looks to be a provision machine that hasn't yet come online. Does that track with anyone else? This is a machine. No, sorry.
Look at the line above. It's removing the finalizer. I think that means it's deleting it.
Yeah, I think that's the delete we're looking at.
So the not found is probably successful delete.
Got it. Someone fix this so we don't throw an error when we are doing something we want to do. Tell them I sent you. All right, let's see here. What timeline are we looking at here? 45. Probably got, I'm gonna go from top to bottom here. 3. I mean, this is really going to be hard to identify. I don't see anything super interesting here.
So
Do we have the machine logs? Can we look at the cloud init on?
even before we look at logs, I would suggest looking at the actual like object status just to see what the object ended up with. Like if we have an error in there.
I think it was 1Q, is that right? Yeah, 1Q.
So
Okay,
we have
we've only
2.
got 2.
That's interesting. So did the second one fail, and that's why we never provisioned it first? Or?
Should we look at a machine? Oh, I see. That's a good point. Let's just. I'm going to quickly look at machines and make sure that there's only 2 machines. Okay, there are only 2 machines. So what Cecile said is, I'm thinking the same exact thing. Control plane provisioning is serial, conditionally upon each one succeeding. And so if one of the control plane kubeadium inits fails, then the third one won't be built. So let's see if that happened. This is actually the wrong place to look for that. I want to go back to logs. Is this right? I think. No, where do I want to go to
Or
find
you
the
could
cloud
look
init?
at the machine status just to see what the machine state
Okay.
was when we ended the test first. Either machine or Azure machine.
So down here. Okay, well, this is ready true. VM state succeeded. Okay, so this would, if kubeadium failed, it would. Okay. So it does not look like it's what I just described.
That's very interesting.
So it's possible that the third one took a long time in Azure to provision, which we can't.
No, because then the Azure machine object would at least exists. So if no machine object exists, that means cluster API didn't even try to provision a third machine.
Is it possible? Well, let's see what the timeline is here. So this is because it was the end-to-end failure was a timeout. So it's possible it was just in the progress of doing its work and took too long. That's 2112. Anybody else thinking of rush when I say that? This is 21. Okay, so that was that's pretty responsive in terms of what is the timeout? Yeah, it's 30 minutes. So that doesn't make sense. Should we look at the CAPI controller manager logs? Sorry, go ahead.
Are the machine resources captured? Because I believe that's where the bootstrap failures get recorded.
Right. I'm gonna sidetrack for 1 second. I am actually curious when the CAPI 1.3 PR landed.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Dane, we do have the bootstrap status in the tab Z machine through the extension. So the extension goes and checks Cloud Init success. So the Azure machine would be failed if Cloud Init has failed.
Why is this so hard for a human?
It's
Okay,
at the top of
December. Okay, so that's this actually to me correlates anecdotally with when I started seeing this. So that's very interesting. So let's which one were we looking at? This one. Do you want to look at the machine status? Is that right? Cool. So I'm not no particular order. So what are we looking for here that is interesting?
It's running. So that means the
Certainly everything looks fine.
volume looks good.
Is the node status there though? I'm wondering if the node itself wasn't ready, like the CNI didn't come up or something.
Is provider ID the right property? So we've got a provider ID. We've got a node. On this one, I'll look at the other one. Is that what you wanted to see, Dane?
Oh, there is an SIG failure there at the bottom.
That's at 13.
That's very.
Oh, that's interesting.
Odds missing.
I'm gonna look at the other machine again. Okay, well, I don't see that etcd event there. Let's see, just really quickly, in the interest of correlation, I'm going to see if I can see that same thing on this other test flake. UEZ. Yep. Okay. And then I just want to triple check that that's bad. Look at a totally boring run here and make sure that the 3 machines that came up did not have any of those. S42. We got 3 as we expect. Oh, okay. Maybe it's not bad.
Oh, interesting.
Or
Maybe it's bad if it happens on the second one because then it blocks the third one and we actually realize that it did that. But then if it happens on the third, we don't see it because our test failed or our test.
let's see which one this was. That's 17 after. So it's at least the second one. 13 after. 12 after. So it was the third one.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, no, if there's a 33% chance of that failing, and if it's only tolerable when it fails in the third one, then that is very bad. Okay, the etcd, maybe we should do this asynchronously. We're not going to sell this in 12 minutes. So what's worth doing in say 12 minutes before we break if we want to keep?
How about checking the machines from a successful run before 130 merged?
Cool. I was going to say that I just want to make an observation that I've seen test flakes, not just IPv6, so other tests have also failed. but this would make sense because this particular failure should have nothing to do in particular with the kubelets IPv6 configuration, which is ultimately what the most interesting thing is happening here, I think. Yes, so that would be, let's just go with December 4th. Okay. December 3rd, that works. I think there's probably a weekend in there. So let's look at this one. You know, is this the tab? I'm going to open up a new window because I'm gonna get lost here. All right, great. Successful test. Let's
You can't
look.
see your window because we can only see the window.
Of course. All right, never mind. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I've had managed more tabs than 6 before. Okay, IPv6 is LXR. So just for folks who've never done this, there's a funny thing where the sort of flavor that you're building here is part of the name. I think this is the cluster name, but then once you dig further in, you notice that that is gone. And so that's why I'm saying out loud LXR, so I can disambiguate once I get this level deep. It's kind of unfortunate. Okay, so let's see if we have any of those failures here. This isn't going to tell us the CAPI version to confirm, but I'm like, it's possible I'm taking this from a PR, from that 1.3 PR.
We can check it in the controller manager log if we really want to.
Okay, so I don't see it there. I don't see it there. I don't see it there. Okay, so let's check the control manager logs to make sure we're looking at a CAPI 1.2 something or other. So that would be CAPI controller manager. Is this, would it be good enough right here? No. Hope you to avoid the big old file. All right. 1.2 dot, cool, 1.2.6, great. All right, we've got 9 minutes. We can do some more bisecting here. So let's look at, I'm going to close all these again because I'm just confused. So we're, oh, I didn't want to close that one. So we're back here. Let's go to latest runs. I'm going to just pick on this failure from this PR and the tests that, okay, great. So both tests failed were multiple control plane tests. Actually, let me quickly just see if that is a consistent pattern. Yep, 3 control planes. Sorry if this is quick for folks. Single control plane. Okay, so that's an exception. But I want to at least correlate in this PR that the other failure was also, so this is the HA cluster. I want to see if this also exhibits that etcd failure. So HA is NXP machines. So we've got our 3 control plane nodes. I can't speak to this one, but it's totally different. It's not the etcd failure. So I'm gonna not worry about that for now, unless someone tells me I should. See if there's an etcd failure here. There is no etcd failure here. Okay, and there's no etcd failure here. So, okay, this is 16. So now I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole. This is 12. This is 14. So this is the second. So, okay, why did this one fail? Maybe this was another, like a known flake, like failed to delete here. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so what did actually failed here?
It does say after each, I think, on the failure.
Pardon me?
I think it said after each on the failure, which is a joke, right?
So it's during cleanup.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is another known flake. So I'm gonna ignore that one. What I want to see is that same etcd. Well, I mean, it's interesting that etcd thing didn't manifest in this, which also has in common with the IPv6 test 3 control plane nodes. So it's just something to think about.
It does say timed out waiting for 3 control plane missions here.
Yeah, but this is it chose to emphasize the IPv6 failure here and not the, yeah, when it zooms in, I don't know how it decides what to zoom in on. Let's see what this failure looks like. So that's an IPv6 failure.
Oh, this one did 1 out of 3.
Let's actually look at that one. That's good. So let's make sure that that one that failed was the same failure. But that's same. We had the same theory, I think, which is that so BDGR. The only way that this would actually not fail is if it was on the 3rd control plane node. Okay, great. So we definitely got a pattern here. Let's see. So this was an IPv6. No, this was this. All right, let's.
Wasn't there a Kubernetes version bump also with that 1.3 PR? I think that
Is Matt on the call? Do you remember that, Matt? Sorry if I'm picking on you for Kubernetes version information.
Or which version?
wasn't the CAPI 1.3 PR, wasn't there also end-to-end test Kubernetes version bump in that? Like we changed the version of the minor version of Kubernetes that we were
That's
testing.
true. Yes, that was part of that PR.
So that could also be a vector.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes, so it's still okay that we're using this time, I think, but maybe in 4 minutes at max, we should figure out a way to break out.
Yeah, it says upgraded Kubernetes version.
Yeah.
Where would that be? Is it easier to just read the description?
Azure dev.yaml in A2 config.
I think he was trying to sync up with what CAPI is doing in general. And that was one of the changes.
Yeah. Scroll down. Right there.
Okay, well, it's
123.
a minor version jump then.
Yeah.
Okay, are those clusters being built with 125?
124. They're built with 124, right?
But so the from is where they're built from.
From is for upgrading. There's one that's separate that doesn't have from or two. That's 124. Yeah. The top one. Yeah, the first Kubernetes version is 124.
Okay, well, that's a big jump. Okay, note to self, we shouldn't do these all in one PR. Why?
Oh,
I have what's that? Go ahead.
sorry. No, I just said we also changed the SIG version to upgrade to, but that shouldn't affect the non-upgrade jobs.
Well, isn't that a part of, doesn't KubeADM provide the etcd version, or do we actually explicitly pass that in?
It does, yeah.
It provides it.
Yeah. So the SIG version likely changed with that bump of Kubernetes version.
Cool. Let's break because we're basically at time. I am going to open up a PR that downgrades the Kubernetes versions, just so we can get some test mileage on that. I think even one IPv6 test that doesn't exhibit this etcd symptom is really interesting data. So we should have that in like an hour or so. And that will at least suggest that this is not a CAPI problem. I mean, this symptom doesn't seem to be something that would have to do with CAPI per se. It seems like it would have to do with the way that kubeadm delivers a static pod configuration, and then that's consumed by kubelet when it starts up. So it seems more in that flow and less in the cluster API flow. Does that sound controversial, what I'm concluding at this point? Okay. Happy Thursday. Thanks everyone for sticking around.
Thanks for driving the investigation, Jack.
I can't, oh, stop share. Like I've lost my Zoom UI. Okay. See you folks online.
Yep.
Thanks, Jack.